If you want to, while I'm kind of getting this set up, if you want to throw out some topics for the future live YouTube, that would be great. I will take them off of here or leave them in the comments if you rewatch this, if you want to do that. And then each live YouTube thing that I do for those 2 months will have a theme, 1 or 2 topics, Q&A. Hopefully we have fun, but I want to make this that I'm just not sitting here rambling for 45 minutes, that I'm really giving you information that's helpful. And the best way for me to get topics is right from you all. So does anybody know, is if I end this stream and start again, will I lose you all or will it come back to this stream? Or can I pause this? And I appreciate your 15 minutes of help. I think after today, everything will go nice and smooth for all the future live YouTube stuff. All right, I'll just keep it linked and I'll do some editing later. I guess there's no pause, no edit. Well, if you want to think of questions too, the 2 themes today are going to be putting beds to rest. I'm in Maryland, so the winter is pretty much here. So putting your beds to rest is going to be one of the themes. The other one's going to be seed starting. I'm going to cover a couple of things. People have questions about using boiling water. Am I killing out the soil life, all that. But if you have questions around putting beds to rest or seed starting, start thinking about them. So we'll wait for 1 o'clock, but if you have questions about anything related to gardening, let's use this 10 minutes to do that. And I think that's what I'm going to do too, is I'll sign on early, 10 minutes. Those people that get in early can just ask whatever question you have in the world of gardening. And when we start at 1, try and keep them to the themes of, putting your beds to rest, winter fertilizing or whatever, and seed starting. Yeah, we didn't have any damage from the wind this past Friday. I see Jack lost his green. Those greenhouses that if they're the metal frames and they're the plastic, any wind gust, it gets up to about even 30 degrees, gets under there and lifts up the whole thing. So if you're using those, really, really tie them down, because it just takes, 1 wind burst and your whole greenhouse will go moving across your property. I have, years ago, start on my deck right by my house, come out the next day, and it's all the way across in another neighbor's yard. And once they pick up, a gust of wind, they're gone. There'd be a lot. Sherry Nation says there's going to be a lot on seed starting. So the YouTube live will kind of go along with my videos and what I'm doing. And I want this to be a place where you can ask a lot of questions. I answered tons of comments on the videos that I make, but having all these people here, we really get a good, conversation going and lots of good information. So, it all doesn't have to come from me. Just please, if you see somebody ask a question in the comment, help them out. Michelle McPherson says, I have a question. What are some of the things we should not do when starting seeds? There's a lot that you shouldn't do. The biggest thing I'll probably say, just to answer that, is don't start too early. Your plants are being grown under the white LED lights that I talk about just to be transplants. So you only want them to get maybe 4 weeks of growth, 6 weeks of growth, 12 weeks of growth, depending on what it is. You're going to be able to hear my dog in the background sometimes. But if you start too early, they get sort of like bonsai plants. You don't have enough room in the starting containers and in the seed starting mix. The roots get bound. The plants don't really get bigger. They think that they're ready to start flowering. So you might get a tomato plant that you've been growing indoors for 12 weeks, 14 weeks, and it starts flowering and it starts developing fruit sometimes. You don't want that. You want to time your plants so they get 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, and then they're outside. You don't want their roots to get constrained or anything like that. And we'll talk about that. In my video series for 2022 and during the live chats, we'll talk about that too, is when do you start them? So don't let them grow longer than you need to. Tanya asks, will my tomato seeds still germinate if I did not ferment first? They will. They just might take a little bit longer. That gel coat prevents germination. So if you ferment them, the alcohol from the fermentation process kills off. That's what that rotting smell is. The gel coat, all that kind of stuff, and the seeds just germinate better. Also, if you put the word question in capital letters, question in capital letters, and then write your question, I'll be able to pull them off of here. You don't have to put your question in caps. Just use the word question. Do I think using logs from a fallen walnut tree would be bad? Black walnut does react and limit growth of plants. If it's not a black walnut, I think that you're fine. However, if it is a black walnut, I really don't know the facts to answer that question. What lights do I recommend for growing from seed to harvest? I don't do that. I would recommend the more expensive lights. It can be hundreds of dollars that have all different colored LED lights, and they're just set up to be able to grow a plant from, seed germination all the way through to harvesting. That includes flowering, fruit production, and all that. And I just don't do that. So it's a good lead into when we get to seed starting. That's really about using, I don't have the lights here, but the white LED lights are perfectly fine for transplants. I don't recommend them for growing to full production. Let's see, Will and Time. What do you think of container greenhouse seed starting indoors with just a windowsill that gets a couple hours of daylight? I don't think it's going to work. You need enough sunlight so that your plant knows it's hitting the sun, not just indirect light, or they get really tall and leggy. And it's a problem. They're just kind of weak. I'll talk about some strategies for seed starting if you don't want to use grow lights or you don't have grow lights. Diversity love. There is no cold tolerant tomato plant. So any tomato plant, once it gets into the 30s and the 40s, if frost hits them, they're going to die off. They're not going to really do much in the 40s. There are plants that do better in the cold, but that is really about the soil still staying about 50 degrees. Day temperatures might drop down to 50. You really need to have your soil temperature getting into the 50s and 60s for your plants to do well. There's no specific plant that's going to do well with cooler temperatures than that, really. Melissa K says, it's good to be 39 and I'm trying to protect my tomatoes. It's not quite done. If it's not going to get to frost, then you're going to be okay. But with the temperatures coming down, things are going to slow down. I don't know if you're in an area that doesn't get, and I do recognize your name, I just don't remember where you live. If you're in a place that doesn't typically get frost and it's going to warm up, just kind of let it go. But you're probably on that downhill fall for tomato plants where frost is going to be here soon. If you have green tomatoes on there, you can pick them and bring them inside. They'll ripen indoors. All right, we'll get ready to start in about 4 minutes. Let's see if there's any more questions. David Huff, that's a really good question. Would you do a winter cover crop for your raised beds, or would a 4x12 bed be too small to worry about. I don't do a cover crop because you need to have enough warmth for that cover crop to take off and grow and establish. And when I have those temperatures, I'm actually growing things in there. So if you have a lot of space and you're kind of, shutting down parts of your garden early fall, cover crops are a great idea. But I use my garden really all the way up until the frosts start coming. So I don't do a cover crop. But when we talk about putting beds to rest, I'll talk about some strategies of adding organic matter. Diversity loves to say you must keep temperatures no lower than 55 for tomatoes. I mean, that's sort of true. I'm not sure exactly what you're doing, but your soil temperature needs to be warm and the day temperatures need to warm up more. And that will just have your plants take off and thrive. When it's colder, like if you try and rush out your tomato transplants here in Maryland, say like in April, the soil is still in the 40s, maybe low 50s, the plants just kind of sit there. So you're not getting a huge jump because your plants aren't really doing anything. It's just not the right conditions. And it's soil temperature and it's the ambient temperature, the temperature around the plants. Tony Alexander, do I need grow lights on my tiny tim tomatoes from seed to harvest if I don't get direct sunlight? You really do. I always encourage people to experiment. I mean, try one plant where you might want to do it without the grow lights. Maybe buy a small grow light system. You can check out the video. I just did it last week or something like that. That will give you a nice setup, but you really do want those white lights on your plants. You can grow like lettuces under there, spinach under there, leafy greens under there. I'll talk about that too once we get started. 2 minutes. I'm just gonna kind of start like we haven't been talking. It'll be 1 o'clock. If you don't do a cover crop, Crystal, and if you don't do a cover crop, do you add nitrogen? I do, and you can add it in many different ways. You don't have to. Basically, for putting beds to rest, you're adding fertilizer, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and you're adding organic matter. Compost has both, but you want to add both of those in. I'll talk about that. If your temperatures are going to be 70, Melissa, then your plant should be fine. All right, so let's just pretend we went live, starting now. Deep breath. So I can't do that. So again, for everybody who's just signing on, I'm going to start maybe 10 or 15 minutes early for most of the YouTube Live, answer some questions. So I'm going to be doing 2 YouTube Live events per month. They will be scheduled. They probably will be Sunday at 1 o'clock. I still want to test out the different times. They will be themed. The theme today is putting beds to rest and seed starting indoors. And I will take questions throughout related to that. If you have a question, type in bold question and then put your question there. This way I can kind of pick it off of the chat. My brother is going to be moderating. He's actually taken his daughter back to college from Thanksgiving break, so he's not here today, but we will have a moderator. If you decide to use Super Chats, I just want to let people know that will all be donated to Freetown Farm. That's where I volunteer. I'm on the board at CEI. And I will put a link in this video description later that links to the blog where I let people know what I'm doing with any donations at Freetown Farm so you can see where the money's going. I'm also going to do one pop-up event each month. It's just going to be unannounced pop-up, but I'm also going to be giving away gift cards to my seed shop, $25 gift cards, even $50 $50 gift cards to the seed shop. I will do that at the end of that pop-up live event. They're going to be about 45 minutes. I'm going to just look for kind of questions that are going on through the month from people, looking at the videos that I've been doing and just kind of pull together some common themes, do a pop-up. It's all going to be really about answering questions and, maybe a light theme or something like that. But I will be giving away the gift cards to my seed shop. I really appreciate the years of support that I have had. meeting all of you. Even though we can't talk face to face, this is much better than me being at my garden and shooting video by myself. I like the interaction. So we'll be giving away the gift cards, and we'll see how it goes through December. Come January 2022, next January, obviously, where I will have more of a formal setup for the YouTube Live. I will send out notifications. I will have the theme set up. This way you know how you want to incorporate them into your day. All right, so the first thing we're going to talk about is putting your beds to rest. I'm in Maryland, for those of you who don't know that. And right about November into December, the frosts are pretty regular. Only my cool crops are surviving and doing decently. So I start thinking about putting my beds to rest. And I'll talk about, basically what that means. After a good season of growing in your garden, you want to refresh nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, the fertilizers, the nutrients. You also want to make sure you add in organic matter. And there's a difference. So chemical fertilizers just bring in N, P, and K. They're not going to harm you. They're not going to wreck your garden, but you shouldn't overuse them. I use them more for an emergency. Organic fertilizers, like the granular stuff that you put in, that does supply some organic matter, but it's not enough. Like your garden, the soil life, worms want a lot of organic matter. An example of a non-nutritional form of organic matter is peat moss. So if you put peat moss in, you're loosening up, it's holding water, it's used by soil life, but it doesn't have a lot of nutritional value for your garden, for your garden plants. So I use that often to just loosen up my clay soil. So you have the organic granular, you sprinkle that down, it gives you N, P, and K, and then you have to start thinking about organic matter. The best thing for organic matter is right now is cutting up grass and leaves with a mower, bag it, and I want to keep it simple. You can just put that right on your garden beds in your bigger, raised bed containers. 2 inches, 4 inches of really shredded leaves, wet it down, throw some sticks on there so they don't blow away, maybe put a tarp on it. You've got your organic matter. It can sit 4 or 5 months. So let me just let you absorb that and kind of see what questions we have around it. So it's two things, is you're adding in the organic fertilizers, NPK, other micronutrients, and you have to add in the organic matter. Jack asks, do you need to do anything to your beds when they are filled with only compost? So if you're lucky enough to have, and that's why I don't say just use compost, because we're all not lucky enough to make enough of it to really have it on hand where you can just throw it everywhere. So if you have a bed filled with compost right now, it's going to break down and drop because it's being used up, it's decaying more, and the level's going to come down. So you do have to throw more in there to bring the level back up. You do want to add the nutrition back in. But if you were to, skip a year and not put more compost on there, your plants are going to do okay. Compost is a nice, low and slow feed. It has the nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, calcium, magnesium, sulfur, micronutrients, organic matter. It's just great stuff. So we'll talk in other live episodes about doing compost bins, but today we'll focus, with the theme. Sherry asks Nations, is there an alternative to peat moss you could use? A great alternative to peat moss is really compost. It's leaves, it's mushroom compost. If you're buying it in bags, it can be expensive. You could use cocoa coir. If you don't want to use peat moss, say in your containers as a water absorbing agent and something to keep the soil loose, you could use cocoa coir. Some people don't want to use peat moss because they feel it's not sustainable. So they talk about cocoa coir, but then some people don't want to use cocoa coir because it takes a tremendous amount of energy to harvest it, lots of fossil fuels, lots of shipping costs to bring it over here. So if you can make your compost, that's really the best way to go about it. Yeah, Crystal Menon just said, isn't using peat moss bad? And I don't really have I have my own opinions, but I don't want to put them on you. When you're gardening, you just have to figure out how you want to garden, what products you want to use, how much money you have, what your budget is, all that kind of stuff. I can probably argue for or against everything that's out there, but compost. And again, we all don't have it. It's expensive to buy in bags, but if you have space, making compost now is really, really a good thing to do. So when you're putting your beds to rest, you have the basic fertilizers. If all you have is something on sale, the granular stuff, just go to your bed, scatter it heavily across the top of your bed, let it be. That will put in, the nutrients that you need. Good enough. Don't over worry about it. I like to use alfalfa pellets. It's a 40-pound bag. They're in pelleted form. I heavily spread them across. That gives NP and K plus a natural growth hormone. You could do both if you want. You could do one or the other. And again, the whole idea is to really figure out what fits your budget, and take it from there. If you don't have those materials and you do have access to leaves and grass right now, bag it up, chop it up, put it on your bed, several inches, wet it down. That will work too. Here in Maryland, we'll get 4 or 5 months. If it doesn't fully break down, you just kind of, move it to the side, put in your transplants, pull it back over there, use it as a mulch again. Also in future, live events, we'll talk about setting up the beds come spring. But right now we're talking about putting them to sleep in the fall. Land that I love, crushed eggshells on resting beds. Yes, it's perfectly fine. There's a little bit of a myth around eggshells that they do a lot. They will do a lot once they break down. They're best really crumbled smallly into small pieces. Put in your compost bin, let them break down. You can put them anywhere you want, but they could take years to break down and really get back to your soil. They won't hurt it, but they're not going to give you that much right away. My raised bed, urban chicken mama. Hey, so I see you all the time when I watch Kim's live YouTube stuff. So my raised bed is stuffed full of strawberries. Will I smother them in mulch? You could. They probably don't need that much, as long as, maybe like where the center of the strawberry will send up new growth. As long as there's a little space there, they're fine. But I would, put them in there, put the compost, put the stuff in there, and then just take your hand and go over it and just kind of try and get 1 or 2 leaves to pop up for the strawberries. I know it's a lot, but you can kind of weigh down the compost, get it around the plants. It's going to be light enough. Even if you get 1 inch or 2 on there, they're still going to pop through there. But if you're concerned, just use a little bit less. You can put more down in the spring. But you would have to use a lot, and it would have to be really heavy to smother out the strawberries. Is there a benefit? Let's see, Jeannie Mario. Is there any benefit for mixing mulched leaves into my grow bags full of potting mix? So, I mean, it's interesting. So right now I have 4 or 5 months. Mulched leaves, I'm not sure if you mean compost or not. So if it's fresh leaves, it's just mulch. And it's kind of fresh, you probably don't want to mix it through. If it's been mulched, like if that's what you've been mulching with for the season, they've been sitting there, they've been breaking down, then it's perfectly fine to mix it in. So that's kind of what we're doing now too. We're taking the fresh leaves, the fresh grass, putting it on the beds. It sits there for 4 or 5 months. It breaks down more, it composts down more, and then it's ready, to be used in some capacity, either as a mulch next year to keep water in, or you can mix it into the soil and, it'll feed the soil life and feed your plants. Tammy Long, see, hi, I'm in Florida. I was told ordered was doing research that I'm in zone 10 people. Oh, I don't fully understand the question, but I think I get it. Gardening zones are sort of outdated. They were kind of created to give us a sense of where we are. And then maybe some way you could be like, well, I'm in zone 10, I'm in zone 7. You would know what to start when. And it doesn't really work that way. In fact, I kind of say, throw the zones out the window, because you can have zone 7 here in Maryland. You can have zone 7 in Tennessee. You can have zone 7 in different places, and you get different weather patterns. What you really want to look for is when your first frost date of the year is, like ours is in November, and when the last frost date is, and that's in May usually. So I know my growing season is really May through November for most warm crops, or into October for most warm crops. And then I can start cool crops sooner. So the gardening zone isn't as important to really knowing what your temperatures are. The thing for Jacksonville, Florida, is your summers can get so hot that your tomato plant shut down, your pepper plant shut down. So you may not be growing tomatoes when I am, but you can start growing them in September, October when it cools down. All right, so putting beds to rest. There's no set way to do it. We covered the alfalfa pellets. Any last questions on putting your beds to rest? The whole key is to really keep it simple. You're just replenishing nutrients. Get some organic granular down if you have it. Buy what's on sale as long as NP and K is represented. And then go ahead and just scatter it heavily on there. I also use wood ash from my fire pit. I use that regularly. It gives your plants potassium, some phosphorus, calcium. And then if you have it, compost, a couple of inches, leaves and grass, a couple of inches, just let it sit and you're good to go. Claudia Byers, this is not kind of related, but I'm always interested in squash bugs. So when should I add beneficial nematodes to the soil to rid squash bugs for next year's squash? So if anybody does that, maybe drop something in the comments to help her out. I've not heard that the nematodes will take out the squash bugs. It may help. So I don't know, to be the answer. It would be wonderful if we could put beneficial nematodes in. It kills out all the grubs in our garden and we have no problems. But sometimes squash bugs also come from other places, or they're not right in your garden area. They're maybe in your footpath where you're not putting nematodes down, or they're coming from somewhere else. So they're hard to deal with. All right, so seed starting. If a quick show of hands, so to speak, how many people are going to be seed starting for the first time this year? Just leave a comment. And again, put your questions out there. So let's go over real quickly. The main idea for seed starting is to save you money. It's to increase the variety of plants that you can grow. You're not just stuck to, going to Home Depot and only having, the soup du jour plants that they put out there. Saving money is a big deal. You can use them for your garden, obviously, but I also recommend, if you're on a budget or you need extra money for your garden, is maybe start trying to grow transplants to do your plant sale. I've talked about that before, where you just, you're getting your timing down. Here in Maryland, late April, beginning of May, I would do a plant sale. Used to sell the plants for $1. Now you can sell them for $2. So it allows you, you want 4 tomato plants, 4 pepper plants, some squash plants, and you start timesing that by 3, you're getting up to $60, $70, $80, $100 for plants. If you want to do lettuces or greens and stuff, it can get really, really expensive, and you just don't have to spend that much. Seed starting isn't that bad, or isn't that difficult, actually. Northern Pike has 9 years of seed starting experience. So if you have any tips, please help people out when they ask questions. Oh, will 1 part vinegar, water, and a tablespoon of dish soap help get rid of winter bugs? I don't know. I don't know what you're spraying. I mean, if you're spraying them outside, or you're, spraying plants that you're bringing inside, it may help kill off what's on the leaves, but I'm not exactly sure how you're using that. Now I'm going to butcher the name, but Mo Steineren, Vicky is the last name, wants to say that they started a business with my content and it was successful. They've got 250 orders. They're in the Netherlands. That's what I hope. Like, no matter where you are globally, gardening is the same. It's the same language. It's the same way to grow plants. But if you're looking to kind of supplement, your garden, or you want to maybe grow stuff and make a living out of it, you can do that. It's really cool. I mean, people love gardening and they need plants. And if you can, set that up that you sell in your area, that would be wonderful. Can my grow, to Loco 16, can my grow lights done germinating seedlings. I have issues with seeds germinating and just stopping if they were germinated under the light. The ones that are left off the light are okay. So, I mean, it's possible that your lights are too intense and it's impacting, whatever's germinating, but that would be very, very rare. I would think it's a different issue. So getting back to seed starting, if you're using the 4-foot fluorescent lights, 5,000 lumens, as close as you can get to 6,500 Kelvin. When you're first starting, you want the lights to sit over the tray really closely. And you want them on nowadays, I say 16 hours, so that when the seed germinates, breaks the surface, it hits light, stops getting tall and leggy, and it just establishes. Is it possible that intense light inhibits the continued growth of your germinating plant? I don't think so, but I would need more information. Anyway, once your lights are on for 16 hours, your plants germinate. 7 days or so later, you can start reducing the amount of light to maybe 14 hours or 12 hours. You start raising the lights. And that's how you really start the process of seed starting to grow your transplants. Remember, again, we're not growing these for flowering or fruiting. We're not taking them from seed to harvest. This is just for transplanting. So you can spend more money on the multicolored LEDs. You can worry about things like par value. The more expensive setups that are like, $100, $200 or something like that, $300, they do work. They're really effective, but you may not necessarily need that just for transplants. So seed starting, here's a good question from Johnny and Trina. Can you harden plants in a greenhouse or will they burn? So hardening off means like when you're growing your seedlings indoors, your transplants indoors, they don't feel the UV rays, the ultraviolet rays from the sun. So they're not protected. They're kind of wimpy. They're not used to the wind. So when you're growing your plants, if you take your hand and you move it across them, or you have a light fan going on, help the plants move. That really helps the plant kind of toughen up a little bit and, be a little bit more firm. Now, UV light isn't in the house. You can take your seed starts, like when they break the surface and, they're just, maybe 2 or 3 days old of breaking the surface. Those plants actually have UV protection. They come out of the ground with the UV protection, but after weeks of growing indoors, they lose it. So if you take that flat out and you put it outside for 30 minutes or an hour, as long as it's not freezing, they're going to get the UV rays, bring them in. A couple of days later, you bring them out for an hour. You can start that hardening off process that way so that at the end, you don't have these big plants that have never been outside. The risk to that is you could bring in some insects from outside. The benefit is they get the sun. The UV rays sometimes help kind of deal with molds and fungus on the soil. The plants are a little bit tougher and it's easier transitioning them out. To answer your question, for a greenhouse, if your greenhouse is just clear plastic or clear glass and it's letting the UV rays in and you put your plants from indoors into the greenhouse, those UV rays are still going to damage the plant. Maybe not as much. If your greenhouse plastic repels some of the UV rays, then you're better off. So the answer is maybe, but it depends on how the light is coming through there. You're really better off slowly introducing your plants over a week's time, a little more each day, to help them harden off. T-Beak says, I always get little flies indoors. I've tried the boiling water, also sand on top. Nothing seems to help. Any suggestions? I would definitely do the boiling water, and that's a good segue into the next part. Boiling water and the depth of microbes. Some people get really upset when I say use boiling water because it does kill off microbes that may be in your starter mix. However, you can introduce those microbes later. Your seed starts don't need them. Some starting mix has some sort of unique proprietary mix of microbes, and they may say don't use boiling water. So here's the fix. Fungus gnat eggs are in peat moss, basically, for what I can figure out. No matter what starting mix you use, if you just use cool water, mix it up, there's a good chance you're going to have hatching fungus gnat eggs because it's cool water, it's a nice warm temperatures at home, fungus gnats can take over. So if you want, and I add the microbes in later when I pot up, or maybe with some worm castings, or I'll just make a solution and add them in. You don't have to worry, in my opinion, that much about it. But if you are concerned, what I recommend is getting something like this, any kind of tote, a clear tote, so that you can see and see if there's any problems, with a locking lid. And what you would do is I would still make a majority of your seed starting mix with boiling water. Kill out whatever's in there, try and make it a sterile mix. But this is just a starting mix, and I hydrated it with just normal tap water, moistened, all that kind of stuff. Put the lid on it, let it sit here for a week, take it outside, open it up, see if you have fungus gnats. And if you don't, I would seal it up again, wait another 2 weeks, open it up, see if you have fungus gnats. This will have all the soil life in here. If you don't have any problem with it, then just use this to kind of dump into your starting mixes. The microbiology will be there. It will multiply. You'll kind of have the best of both worlds. I just lean towards really having that sterile starting mix because you don't want a fungus gnat problem. Inside in a small green, inside in a small seed starting area, the fungus gnats have no place to go except to your seed starts, and they just will infest it. You know, you don't really have to do boiling water if you're out in a bigger greenhouse or you have a really large space, because they're going to move around and fly around and they don't become that big of a problem. But indoors, they have no natural enemy. They have no place to go except on your seed starts. Let's see. All right. So let's see. Crystal and Jess on Quarter Acre Garden. How do I get rid of the gnats once I have them, or is it too late? It's not really too late. I mean, there's things you can do. You can put up the yellow sticky traps that will kill some of the adults. You can try and manage the water and let the starting mix top dry a whole lot. Starting mix, your seed starts will always dry from the top down. That can help a little bit. You can see I saw some stuff go through here about neem oil. I've made a neem oil drench where it's 2 tablespoons of neem soap in a gallon of water. I mix it up and then I soak the seed starts with that. I've tried beneficial nematodes. That helped a little bit. Hydrogen peroxide, 3%. You can do 50% water, 50% of 3% hydrogen peroxide, mix it, drench your seed starts. That helps a little bit. And if you notice, the theme that I'm saying is it helps a little bit. You can kind of knock them down and knock them back. Cinnamon helps. But I haven't found a cure for them once you have it. That's why I stress and really wanted to focus this live YouTube on sterile starting mix. You just don't want to get the fungus gnats. I'll be doing a 2022 series on seed starting. I will be covering all these topics we're talking about in more depth. And I'm also going to focus that series on a family of 4, small garden, 1 shelf of plants, and I'll show you how to really grow for a garden that size. All right, let's see if there's any more questions. All right, so basic supplies. So there are a lot of people that are new to gardening, and there's a couple of things. This is your basic setup. And one of the cool things about starting seeds indoors is this is 72 cells. These are called cells. Those little 6-packs or 4-packs. There's not much space in here. They're just the seed starting. These are what you can find at most big box stores, Walmart, all those places. I sell all this at my seed shop. And actually, there's a Black Friday sale going on for a while where these are greatly discounted, especially for getting started with seed starting. Also have a big discount on fabric pots, the root pouches that we sell. So you're going to need something like this. 1 flat will get you 72 plants. These are called cells. This container here is called a flat. That's what the cells go into. If you don't want to buy this, you can go to your dollar store, get foil baking trays. You can use yogurt cups, just poke holes in it. You can really kind of make these. You need something that's going to hold your containers. And the way that I water is I fill up the bottom, the water seeps in from below the cells or from your cups, and that's just a great way to take care of them. But you're going to need some basic supplies. I don't know if you can tell, but these are dirty. I actually don't sterilize my stuff. If I had a problem, I would, but I just don't. Sometimes I get lazy. We sell these at the seed shop. You can see how big they are. So the one question I get often is, do I have to start my tomato plants or my pepper plants in those, oh, just made a mess, in these small cells and then pot them up over time? And the answer is no. You don't have to start in small cells when you're seed starting and pot up. I grow hundreds of plants, and I don't have that much room in here, so that I have to do that. But if you're just doing, say, for your garden, 6 tomato plants, start in a bigger cell like this, or a yogurt cup or a water bottle cut in half, just poke holes in it. And you can grow that transplant in here for that full 6 or 8 weeks. And it can stand under the lights. You're good to go. You just pop it out. It goes right into the garden. It's not a lot of work. You put in the seed starting mix, you put in your tomatoes at the right time. I will go over that with you in the video series. And then you just let them grow in here and you're good to go. In this kind of setup, there's 6, 12, 24, 36 plants. 36 times 3, that's what, $108. So if you bought your transplants, you're going to spend $108. This costs a couple of dollars. Seed starting mix, maybe a couple of dollars. Seeds, a couple of dollars. You get the idea. You can really grow everything you need and save a lot of money. If you have more space, you set up a bunch of flats like that. That's what you can grow extra plants for, for your plant cell or something like that, or to share, or to swap, or to trade. I mean, there's all kinds of great things you can do with your own transplants. Cooking made easy in Atlanta. Will you be starting any new to you or unusual seeds in 2022? The answer is yes. What are they? I don't know. I mean, I'm always buying seeds. I already have seeds. Like, I bought these already, and this is a red and yellow strawberry variety that I've not grown before. This is a yellow form of butterfly flower, which is a perennial. I'll be going over how you grow perennials. You can save a lot of money with perennials too, because you can do purple cone flower. You can do all your flowers that are perennials. Perennials mean they come back year after year. So if you start them indoors in January, you get them into the ground, April, they're going to establish, they're going to get nice and large. Next year, you can divide them in half, and all of a sudden you can start propagating perennials across your property, and you're not paying anything for it. Perennial plants can cost $4, $5, $6, $8, depending on what size you buy them at. I would recommend really starting some of them indoors. So I will be, doing different plants. Sometimes I add in like 3 or 4 different tomato varieties that I haven't grown before. I want to see how they do. And kind of, just kind of have fun with it. When you start indoors, you can actually pick anything you see online and you can give it a try. One of the things I want to talk about seed starting was stratification. I just did a video on that. Stratifying means that your seeds have some sort of setup, some sort of enzyme, some sort of chemical compound, whatever it is, to not germinate unless they get a cold period. And it's usually around 32 degrees, maybe some freezing, but you can use your refrigerator to bring the temperature down of those seeds, into the 30s, closer to 32 degrees is best. Let them sit in there 4 weeks or 8 weeks. So that's why I bought some of these seeds now. They need to be stratified. Or stratification process, but stratified. So that will then chill them. You take them out, they warm up. The enzyme or that chemical compound inside breaks down, and then you get better germination. And you see this a lot. If you've ever been trying to grow lavender, rosemary, sometimes chives, oregano, thyme, those are some of the basic ones, and you don't get good germination, it's probably because they didn't have that cold period. So in the last video I did, in that video description are like the 35 perennials, herbs, vegetables that I grow that I think need some sort of stratification process. Sharon Nash, could you review the mix for making your own seed starting mix? Happy Sunday from Long Island. So I don't remember it off the top of my head, but I think that it was like 5 or 6 parts. I just made this myself. Dried peat moss and 1 part vermiculite. A part is an equal measure. So if it's, a 16-ounce cup, it would be 5 or 6 cups of peat moss and then 1 cup of vermiculite. I used to put in perlite into there. You don't have to, but it's just a nice peat-based starting mix, and it works really well. I have it somewhere in my YouTube videos, but I don't know it off the top of my head. Sorry. But that's one way to, save money. Like if you buy a big compressed bale of peat moss, that's sometimes 2 cubic feet to 3 cubic feet, and it's anywhere from $12 to $20. That's really inexpensive versus buying these 8-quart dry bags. It could cost anywhere from $6 to $12 and stuff like that. So again, it depends on your budget, but there's a convenience to just buying that starting mix, setting it up, and you don't have to worry about it. I also have a book, Modern Homestead Garden. Chapter 3 is all about starting indoors, and it pretty much follows what I've been talking about. You can find this at my seed shop. You can also get an autographed copy if you're interested. I can't compete with Amazon. You can get this book at Amazon for $16.99. They discount it really nicely, which is great. However, that's not much more than what I have to pay for it to sell at my seed shop. Anyway, good. The book is available more cheaply. However, if you go to my seed shop, the autographed copy is going to be $24.99. How do I pick the seeds to sell in my shop? So I kind of started with what I like to grow. What are the basics to grow? I find bulk deals in seeds, and just kind of built that way. This year, we're going to be working with Bentley Seeds. It's a wonderful company. I got to meet them. I'll be talking about that in the future. But I'm basically looking for seeds that germinate well, but really meet the needs of the gardener. And that would be perennials for decoration, for pollinators, for bees, herbs for culinary uses, and vegetables that grow well throughout the different zones. And that covers a lot. Like I don't get into any real specialty beans or, strange cucumbers or melons yet. Maybe I will. But this year for me, I'm going to be organizing my main garden more as a place to kind of survive. Now, I'm still going to be buying plenty of food when I need and stuff like that. But this year, I want to see how much I can get out of the garden, really rely on it, and use day to day. I just bought all the supplies for canning. I'm going to be learning how to can in January. And I'm really going to try and make a shift to maximizing all the food that comes out of my garden. So it should be kind of fun. Let's see. So there's a comment here. Oak leaves don't break down like cottonwood leaves, so they are not good for composting. And there's truth to that. So you have your thicker leaves that if you are putting your bed to rest with the thicker leaves, they're not going to break down a whole lot. They'd be fine for composting, but they may take a year or two to break down because they're thicker. And if you're not chopping them up, they're going to take even longer. But thinner leaves, I have like a birch wood, that's wonderful leaves. A maple that really, when that leaf falls, it dries, and they just crumble apart. So the thinner the leaf, the more crumbly it can be, the better it's going to break down from fall to spring, for your overwintering. And Jeannie Mario has the same goal. She wants to maximize the amount of food I can eat from my garden. Every meal should have at least one element. And that's what I'm going for. So I might have to buy a protein fairly regularly since I don't have chickens or fish or anything yet. I hope to get them. But I'm going to try and use ingredients in each meal from the garden. Jonathan Swift. So I'm just starting canning. So the only thing I can tell you is I got on Amazon. I bought a canning pot. I think it was 20 quarts, just a big pot like this so that you can get a good amount of the mason jars in there. But it comes with everything. If you just go online, you're going to want a pot. You want it to be at least 20 quarts. You want it to be a good size. It's going to come with something that you sit into the pot so that you can put your jars on there. You're going to need the jars. You're going to need tongs to pull the jars out. But it's not really that expensive to get started. I would just check it out. Crown Tail Half Moon says, do you use hot water on Cocopeat and vermiculite? or Pearlite for the seed mix. So if you're just using plain cocoa coir with vermiculite, I've actually noticed there's a lot less issue with fungus gnats. So you might be able to go with a cocoa coir, vermiculite, perlite based starting mix and forgo fungus gnats. I'm not 100% sure. I would still put hot water in there because I had the soil life back in later if I decide to do that. I just don't want any fungus gnats. Urban Chicken Mama, I appreciate that. Can I show pics of the kids at Freetown Farm? They love it. They have a good time. There is issue with me being able to videotape and show faces actually in the YouTube video. So sometimes I can get around it if I know the kids and the parents say okay, but I will try and get some nice video of that place being used by all the kids. They have a program called Roots and Refuge where it's a sort of homeschooling and teaching, and the kids just love it. I mean, there's dozens of kids running around and having a great time. Just checking out the questions real quick. And it looks like, I'm glad. So some people who have canned before, if you can give out some good tips on what supplies a beginner might want, that would be great. I just don't know it well enough. I don't even know what the technical names of it. So I'll be like, the pot and that thing you sit stuff on and that grabber thing. But I'll figure it out. I will do videos on it as I learn more about it. But I don't want to do a video where I'm just making up stuff. All right. So a little bit on timing seed starting indoors. So again, I was talking about this, is you don't want your plants to become bonsai root bound plants when you're starting indoors. So you really want to have them growing like cucumbers, zucchini, squash, melons, pumpkins, cantaloupe, those bigger warm weather crops. A lot of them can actually just be started outside, but if you want to start them indoors for whatever reason or get a jump on the season, once they break the surface, you really want them to get out into the garden in 3 or 4 weeks. Now, if they go longer, yeah, they're still going to be okay. But you want to move them out at the right time. So when they hit that ground, the root systems start growing, the plant's leaves take off, the plant is really thriving, and everything goes well. If they get root bound, they're going to figure it out, but it's going to take a couple of weeks for them to figure it out. And when I'm growing the bigger plants, like squash, well, bigger seeds actually, if the seed is, the size of a pumpkin seed, cucumber seed, you don't really want to start them in these tiny 6 cells, the standard cells that you see. There's just not enough starting mix in there to hold them. You want to start in something bigger, in that yogurt cup, in a 2.5-inch cup. Plant those bigger seeds in bigger containers. And you are going to want to do that here again in Maryland. If I want them to go out, say, May 15th, I count back 4 weeks to April 15th. That would be 4 weeks of growth. And I may put them into the seed starting mix, like April 7th, April 8th, or something like that. This way, the timing is right. I can move the plants. I can start the plants indoors. They germinate within about 5 days. They grow 3 to 4 weeks. I get them outside. Things are good to go. Yeah. Tomato plants, pepper plants, you have room. Like I've grown pepper plants indoors ready to grow and begin to and produce fruit. So the timing for tomatoes, really I've learned that you can go to 4 to 6 weeks with tomatoes. Getting them out extra early when that soil is cold outside doesn't do much. Peppers, I'd like to get 8 to 10 weeks of growth for sweet peppers, jalapenos. Super hots, for whatever reason, like habaneros, ghost peppers, I like to try and get 12 weeks of growth. That they just seem to grow slowly. Phil Porter asks, have you had any trouble or experience with birch leaves or birch pollen inhibiting the growth of certain vegetables? He is in Europe. I have not. I haven't ever heard anything about that either. I've heard about the black walnut. If anybody has some information about birch leaves, please leave a comment for him. Mary says, question regarding shortages of fertilizer. What alternatives do we have if fertilizers become scarce? So the cool thing about gardening is it's global. So when I'm talking with people, let me move this a second. When I'm talking with people, I really want to respect their budgets, respect where they're living with, everybody may not have 2 Home Depots and a Lowe's like I do near me. So things can be scarce, things can be expensive. Fertilizers in the US could be twice as much over in Europe. So what do you do? So the first question is, if you're in a place right now and you're concerned about shortages of fertilizer, or you're on a limited budget, or you just want to save money and stop, paying the man for products, it's compost. If you have land right now, leaves, grass, get them into a bin, just get the process started. If you're on a place where you don't have land, if you have family or friends, maybe they'll allow you to compost or do something. Fertilizer. Now, if you can't buy granular types, if you can't buy the organic types, sometimes there's a shortage with that. The chemical fertilizers aren't going to poison everything if you just use them wisely. And that might be for an emergency. And they're really inexpensive. You can find them just about anywhere. If you go to where they sell grass seed, you can find 10-10-10 chemical-based, although all things are chemicals, human-made fertilizers for maybe $10 for 40 pounds. That is a good backup for emergency. And that emergency might be, hey, I can't get the products I want to use. I can't get the organic products I want to use, but I still want to have a garden and I still want to feed myself. Chemical fertilizers will work. That being said, just real quick, the fertilizers were dumped on farms in the 40s and 50s in crazy amounts. They didn't take care of adding compost and organic matter. They just thought, hey, we'll just throw these fertilizers around. We'll just throw these fertilizers around and everything will be fine. Well, after years of doing that, they killed out the soil life. They had all kinds of runoff. They caused problems. The soil wasn't fertile. And they had to go back to common sense. Compost, organic fertilizers, using the human-made chemical types when needed is okay. But go to compost and organic as much as you can. I hope that helps. Other crazy things like human urine. If you pee in a pot and you dilute it by like 10, you can use that for nitrogen. You can use wood ash for phosphorus and potassium. There are alternatives, but you just, kind of look at it now before there's a shortage and maybe have a backup plan. Let's see, any more? Johnny and Trina again, question if you really do type in the word question in bold, it's a lot easier for me to find it and read it out. Question with cold frames, do you have to open them on warmer days this time of year? So yes, if the temperatures are getting into the 60s in a full sunny day, I would open them up because plants in there could possibly bake. A cold frame is kind of low to the ground, so the temperatures are kind of regulated a little bit better. I have a couple different cold frames. I have one that has an automatic opener, and it's really cool because it's filled with a substance that when it warms up, it raises the roof, it vents the cold frame, and it's good to go. I have another one that I made that I just, pop off if it's getting up into the 60s or something like that. But you have to be aware that you just don't let your cold frame overheat. It doesn't happen often, and if it's getting that warm regularly, you probably don't need a cold frame right now. So Jolene's Garden says, love that you painted your cabinet in the corner. Kind of looks like you have a TARDIS back there. So that is painted black now. I painted some of it red, to give that cool red color. And then I put white trim on it. And then I did the venting up top there in black. And it was god awful. It looked like a Christmas toy soldier with all the colors. So after kind of messing with it, it went to all black. And I actually like that. So black is good. Tanya Raz says, have you ever used a garden vegetable software to help with timing and spacing? I've not. It is a good idea. The reason I don't is I'm just not that organized. I'm not really impulsive, but I always have to keep moving. So I'm always doing something in the garden. So I will jot down some things that I want to start. I also been doing this for, well, over 20 years. So I have the timing pretty much set down in my head. But if you're just getting started, software is good to use. Putting it on paper is good to use. Drawing out, roughly what your garden looks like, where different things are going in the beds is helpful. But over time, you sort of get into a routine. Marianne Rapp, do you have a video about preparing a new garden over the winter months that you could point me to? I need to have the work done early, but don't want to waste fertilizer, for instance. I don't necessarily have a specific video on that, but if you look at building raised beds or filling raised beds, or you look at some of my videos on setting up raised beds for growing tomatoes, it's all those basic principles that will help you out. I mean, depending on how you're setting up the bed, you can put lesser material in the bottom of a tall or of a raised bed that has 12-inch sides. But you can use compost, manures, granular fertilizer, all kinds of different things now, and that will set your bed up for the spring. Angela Walton says, for garlic, hardneck or softneck in Maryland? So I switched to hardneck. I put the hardneck in really in October, November. You still have time in Maryland, actually. You can put it in now. That seems to bulb and grow better. I do put the softneck garlic in early in the spring. The bulbs don't get as big, but it grows a lot of greenery. I do get something out of it, but I like to use the hardneck to overwinter in Maryland and have bigger bulbs. And then the last thing, on what time do we have? 1:48. All right, we have about 10 minutes. When you start seeds indoors, one of the plants that you may start are cold weather plants like broccoli, lettuce, spinach, kale, basically your leafy greens. Because it's warm in a house, about 70 degrees, because there's not a lot of soil for the seed to be in, your soil warms up to about 70 degrees. Your cool weather crops can get kind of tall and leggy, and you think it's because you don't have enough light, but they do have enough light. You've got your white lights right over them. They're getting tall and leggy because they're too warm. They want the cool weather. They like 40 degrees soil temperature, 50 degrees soil temperature. They like cool nights. They like to just kind of slowly grow and do their thing. Once they get too warm, they start growing really quickly. They want to start producing flower stalks. They want to bolt. They want to produce seed. So what I'm going to do this year is I may germinate some lettuce, spinach, kale indoors. And as soon as it breaks the surface, they're going right out into my cold frame. And they may get down to freezing temperatures or frosting temperatures in that cold frame. But I'm going to kind of do a winter sowing hybrid for all my cool weather crops. It will take up less space in here. They will get acclimated out there. But I may just, germinate them. They break the surface. The flats go out into my cold frames. They just stay there. Keep an eye on them. A couple months later, they go out into my garden. So you can have some strategies for how you want to grow in your grow light station indoors. It doesn't have to be everything. Cool weather crops can go outside. All right. So can you tell us about your grandpa and how he worked at Campbell Soup? I was looking at Yola wonder on your shop for next year. So he spent his whole life working at Campbell Soup. So we used to, in elementary school, we had the label collection. Like if you would bring in Campbell Soup labels, your classroom got certain things. And it was always wonderful because I would be the kid who would walk in with all these Campbell Soup labels that he would bring in from work and from eating them and stuff like that. So that is a really good memory. And for those of you that don't kind of know the story, in the beginning of my book, it talks about my grandfather. He taught me about gardening. And that's part of what I want to do. That's why I like working at Freetown Farm and getting kids involved. I want people to learn about gardening and decide if they have a passion for it. It's a wonderful hobby. It's good for the mind. It's good for the spirit. It's good for socializing. It's good on so many levels. Anyway, he would come over when I was in second grade. He'd come over with a brown bag. There'd be tomatoes in there. Open the bag. I could smell the tomato plants. He would just dig a hole real quick, throw in some lime, tell me he's sweetening the soil, put the tomato plant in, put the soil around it, walk away. I didn't really know what I was learning then, but I learned that I had a passion for it, and it's just a really good experience. And it has stayed with me. I'm 55, for those of you who don't know that. It has stayed with me for my entire life, and I hope to convey that to you all. But what I also hope is that then you guys can convey it to grandkids, to kids, and just really teach them about vegetable gardening. All right. Any more questions real quick? Here's one question. Are red onion seeds harder to germinate than white and brown onion seeds? I've tried 2 different varieties of onion seeds. Both were failures. The white and brown were okay. So onion seeds do help from that process of stratification. Different varieties need different cold periods. So maybe the red ones you had, for wherever they grow, maybe they need a longer cold period. So I would put your onions in the refrigerator for 4 weeks. Give them that 4 weeks of cold time. You can go up to 8 weeks. I haven't found any benefit going past 8 weeks. I have found that 2 weeks does make a difference for some plants, but generally speaking, 4 to 8 weeks works really well for stratifying onion seeds, and that should help with germination. All right. Urban Chicken Mama's growing in 100-gallon root pouches. That's what I grow, and that's what we sell at the seed shop. She's saying I don't have to brag. I love the root pouches. They are just a great way to fill a space. If you're in a place where you may have to move, what I like about the root pouches is you could empty the soil out. You take the pouch with you. It's totally mobile. You can put them on concrete and stuff like that. But I love the root pouches for growing garlic and onions, and she was just mention that. That's what I'm going to be doing next year. I'm going to be doing potatoes, sweet potatoes, onions, garlic in my root pouches. They just seem to do really, really well in there. All right, we got 5 minutes to wrap up. So I'm going to, try and do this for 1 hour, twice a week, or twice a month, Sundays at 1 o'clock. Please leave comments about what you would like to see for a theme in the videos. I'll have a moderator to help out just a little bit. But my goal is going to be to really supply information that helps you guys with your gardens and answer questions. And this question's actually interesting. Tammy B says, question, how do you maintain soil life in your containers? So soil life is sort of the, I don't know, can you say soup du jour of gardening right now, where people will tell you, don't turn your garden, you're wrecking the soil life, you're messing up the microbiology. If you're using fertilizer, they need to have different bacteria and microbes in there. Buy this brand that has this specialized, microbe cocktail in there. When you're in a container, the soil life isn't like it is out in your garden. Not enough soil life in there to matter. You're using peat moss and container mixes that just don't have a lot. The answer to the question is you don't have to maintain the soil life in your containers. You have to feed and water your plants regularly for them to grow well in containers. Soil life is a bonus. If you're concerned about that, using your organic fertilizers will create food and stuff for the microbes. But just take a handful of compost that you may have, or dig up some soil from your yard. It's packed full of microbes. Mix it into your container mix, water it in, walk away. Those microbes are going to multiply to the billions. They're going to fill up your container, and everything is going to be okay. But you could, in theory, grow in containers in totally sterile mix with no soil life, and you can still have a good harvest. Just don't pay a lot of extra money for all these soil products that you're going to be hearing about out in forms of fertilizer, even in starting mixes, as additions to your garden. It's just compost. Compost, compost, compost has everything a garden needs, including soil life. And let's end with, so Sharon Nash says, did you pass on your love for gardening to your kids? So as kids, they loved gardening. They would decorate cups and they would draw the sun and rain and water, and they were part of that. But now they're in their 20s. They're doing their own thing. They're not into gardening, but I know that the passion is there. And I think when they move to a place where they can have a garden, they're certainly going to have one. And I will be there setting up gardens anyway. So they're going to have them, you know, for as long as I'm around. But I think they'll certainly adopt them, and they will teach their grandkids too. All right, I want to say thank you. We're going to end here. Send me suggestions. I will put something out for another live YouTube. Grab some leaves and grass, get them onto your raised beds or wherever you're growing out in the earth. Cover them with a tarp that has holes in it, or just throw some sticks on there to weigh it down, and you'll be a lot happier for it come spring. Your garden will love you for it. Thanks for watching.